We turn now to the catastrophic flooding emergency back here at home.
Oh my gosh, there's a car floating down the freaking street.
Will open up rivers on the bare heights and springs in the midst of the valleys. I will make the wilderness a pool of water and the dry land fountains.
Across America, something is shifting. Waters are climbing higher, forests are vanishing into walls of flame. Enormous dark clouds hang motionless over entire regions, and wildlife is perishing in rivers that once teemed with life. Ancient stone carvings, deadly ocean swells, and a mysterious dark substance settling onto neighborhoods are beginning to form a pattern that a growing number of people simply cannot dismiss. Are these merely natural events, or could they be urgent signals calling a distracted generation back to awareness? Jesus said in Luke 21:28, "When these things begin to take place, stand up and lift up your heads because your redemption is drawing near." Before we go further, go ahead and like this video, drop your thoughts and prayers in the comment section below, and hit subscribe so you never miss what we cover next. Stay with us, because what we are about to walk through together may completely shift the way you see the season we are living in. Along the shoreline of Sarasota, Florida, the ocean has once again transformed into something deeply unsettling. A reddish-brown discoloration has crept across the water's surface, and thousands upon thousands of dead fish have washed ashore, blanketing the beaches in lifeless bodies while a suffocating stench pushes into nearby residential areas. Tourists are turning around before they ever reach the sand. Fishermen have suspended their livelihoods. Residents are reporting persistent coughing, throat irritation, and burning eyes as toxic particles travel inland on the wind. A coastline that once attracted people from across the country has grown eerily quiet. Scientists have traced the source to Karenia brevis, a naturally occurring marine algae that releases powerful toxins into the surrounding water. When these blooms reach massive scale, fish die in enormous numbers, and dolphins, sea turtles, and other marine animals suffer severe harm. People living near the shore face respiratory consequences simply from breathing the air. Red tide events along Florida's Gulf Coast have been documented since the 1800s and return with regularity under the right environmental conditions. For many Christians, scenes like this carry echoes of Hosea 4:3, where the land mourned and even the fish of the sea perished alongside the birds and the beasts. That does not make every red tide a direct act of divine judgment, but it does offer a sobering reminder that when we neglect creation, the damage eventually circles back to us. The suffering of the natural world is never truly separate from our own, and it calls us to take seriously the responsibility God has placed in our hands. Even as dead fish covered the beaches of Florida, another disaster was already erupting hundreds of miles inland. The Guadalupe River in Texas, overwhelmed by relentless rainfall, suddenly transformed into a thundering wall of brown water. In minutes, the river broke through every natural barrier and consumed everything in its path. Roads that had been traveled just hours before vanished completely. Bridges were swallowed by the current. Entire neighborhoods became islands in a matter of moments. Family vehicles, including trucks and SUVs, were snatched off roads and carried downstream, tumbling violently before disappearing beneath the surface. Some residents looked out their front windows only to realize the ground outside no longer existed. In its place was a swirling mass of fast-moving floodwater. Panic moved through those communities faster than the water itself. Parents who had been asleep moments before were now grabbing their children and racing to second floors as frigid water began pouring through their doors and windows. Others crawled into attics in the darkness, praying desperately that the water would stop rising before it reached them. Emergency lines were overwhelmed, rescue boats launched into violent currents that threatened to capsize them, while military helicopters worked through the chaos above, lowering rescuers and lifting trapped families one at a time. For the men and women conducting those rescues, every single flight was measured in lives. Every minute counted. The river granted no grace period and offered no second chances. Scenes like these bring to mind Psalm 18, which speaks of a moment when the waters of destruction surround a person and human strength is simply not enough. Whether seen as a natural catastrophe or as a spiritual wake-up call, the Texas floods delivered one unmistakable message. Life can be completely reversed in a matter of minutes. Even before the Guadalupe River began to recede, an entirely different crisis had already ignited across the western part of the country. This disaster did not rise from below, it descended from above. Dry lightning crackled across forests already hollowed out by months of severe drought. Within seconds of each strike, enormous trees burst into fire. With virtually no moisture left anywhere in the surrounding vegetation, the flames expanded at a terrifying pace. Fierce winds picked up burning embers and launched them far ahead of the main fire line, causing new blazes to explode in areas that seemed safe moments earlier. Firefighters raced to cut containment lines, but the fire moved faster than their equipment could follow. Emergency sirens echoed through multiple communities at once. Families rushed through front doors, grabbing whatever they could carry, before fleeing down roads so thick with smoke that headlights were almost useless. Orange skies glowed behind them as entire neighborhoods braced for the advancing wall of flame. Farms burned. Forests that had stood for generations were reduced to ash in hours. Experts explain that prolonged dry conditions, parched vegetation, and strong wind create a combination that is nearly impossible to stop once it gains momentum. Even veteran crews can be forced to pull back and wait. For those holding scripture in their hearts, this brings to mind Ezekiel 20:47, where God describes a blazing fire consuming every green tree and every dry tree alike, a fire that no one can extinguish. Whether understood as a climate-driven disaster or as a haunting reminder, these fires demonstrate in the most absolute terms how rapidly everything a community depends on can be erased when the land itself becomes fuel. As those wildfires continued their advance across the western United States, they produced a second threat that extended far beyond the flames themselves. Massive plumes of thick smoke began rolling over cities, valleys, and mountain ranges, assembling into enormous dark formations that appeared almost stationary in the sky. Hour after hour, instead of breaking apart and drifting away, the smoke thickened and spread, forming an unbroken canopy that swallowed the sunlight and replaced it with an eerie orange-gray haze. Buildings, entire neighborhoods, and distant mountain ranges slowly faded from view behind the dense wall of smoke. It felt less like afternoon and more like the final moments before nightfall. Air quality warnings spread across multiple states as smoke traveled hundreds of miles from the original fire zones. Health officials urged people to stay indoors, but even inside their homes, residents were experiencing prolonged coughing, eye irritation, sore throats, and serious difficulty drawing a full breath. Schools shut down outdoor activity entirely. Parks and recreation areas stood empty. Hospital emergency departments began seeing a surge in patients suffering from smoke-related breathing problems, including people who lived nowhere near the actual fires. The particles had traveled on the wind and found them anyway. For those who read Scripture, Joel 2:30 comes to mind, where God says he will show wonders in the heavens and in the earth, blood and fire and columns of smoke. Whether understood as a consequence of extreme wildfire conditions or as something more, skies that turn dark in the middle of the day are not easy to set aside. And yet, while unusual signs multiplied across America, an entirely different kind of mystery was waiting quietly in the desert, carved into stone, thousands of years before any of this generation was born. High on the sandstone walls of Sego Canyon in Utah, a collection of ancient petroglyphs has been drawing visitors and researchers into a debate that shows no sign of ending. Among the many carvings spread across those cliff faces, a group of towering human-like figures immediately seizes the attention of anyone who stands before them. These figures have no mouths. They have no distinct facial structure. Their eyes are enormous and deeply dark. Their heads are elongated, and their bodies are wide in ways that do not match ordinary human proportions. Standing before these carvings, many visitors have described an unsettling sensation as though the figures are silently watching them from across the centuries. The mystery grows when you examine a series of circular shapes carved alongside these figures. Some observers see in those shapes what look like flying discs, celestial objects, or arrangements that bear a striking resemblance to how people today describe unidentified aerial phenomena. Images of these carvings have traveled widely across the internet, sparking ongoing discussion and a wide range of theories about what the ancient people who made them may have witnessed or believed. Archaeologists, however, offer a more grounded interpretation. They connect these carvings to the Barrier Canyon-style tradition and suggest they most likely depict spiritual entities, ceremonial symbols, or figures drawn from the religious beliefs of the indigenous cultures that once inhabited this region. So what do you think? Were these towering, featureless figures simply powerful religious symbols created from deep within an ancient belief system? Or do they represent something that the people of that era genuinely believed they had seen with their own eyes? Share your perspective in the comments. I'm genuinely curious what you think. The mysteries preserved in desert stone were not the only secrets beginning to surface. Thousands of miles to the north, ice fields that had existed for centuries were quietly giving back what they had held for generations. In the remote Nutsotten Mountains within Wrangell St. Elias National Park in Alaska, melting ice patches have been surrendering an extraordinary collection of objects that no living person had ever seen. Archaeologists working in the area have recovered ancient hunting implements, wooden objects, woven materials, and other organic remains that had been locked beneath the frozen ground since long before written history. In certain locations, these objects have been found alongside animal bones, pointing to a time when hunters moved through these rugged mountain passages in search of game or crossing routes into new territory. The field of ice patch archaeology is well established across Alaska, and its urgency is only growing. As the ice continues to shrink, these incredibly well-preserved materials are suddenly exposed to air, moisture, and sunlight for the first time in centuries. Once that exposure begins, organic materials can begin to deteriorate within days. Research teams are working in races against time, recovering what they can before irreplaceable artifacts crumble into nothing. For many Christians, Luke 8:17 resonates in moments like these. Nothing is hidden that will not be made known, and nothing is secret that will not come to light. The retreat of the ice is not on its own a supernatural event, but it serves as a striking reminder that what has been buried for centuries does not stay buried forever. Off the coastline, the surface of the water appeared completely calm. Boats moved across it without difficulty. Crews went about their routines. Nothing visible suggested any threat was approaching. Then the sea changed. With very little warning, powerful waves surged upward and struck vessels from the side with sudden and tremendous force. Smaller boats were knocked sideways. Larger vessels fought to stay upright as the water shifted in directions that made no sense to experienced sailors. Within a very short window, multiple boats had capsized. Passengers were thrown into confusion as alarms activated and damaged vessels drifted amid broken equipment and floating wreckage. Rescue teams launched into rough conditions, searching between towering swells for anyone separated from their boat. Helicopters swept the surface while emergency crews battled a sea that continued to surge without any predictable pattern. Scientists can point to several possible causes: rogue waves, rapid shifts in atmospheric pressure, strong underwater currents, or disturbances from beneath the seafloor. A rogue wave forms when multiple smaller wave systems combine into a sudden wall of water that can appear without any meaningful advance warning. Pressure shifts and underwater movement can redirect currents in minutes with very little visible sign on the surface. Understanding these causes does not make the events any less serious. The ocean can look peaceful and become fatal within a single moment. Technology can monitor storm systems, track tidal patterns, and guide vessels, but it cannot guarantee that every threat will be detected before it arrives. That is the warning embedded in this event. A surface that looks calm must never be confused with a situation that is truly safe. Luke 21:25 speaks of distress among nations, with people bewildered by the roaring and tossing of the sea. These words are not a license to panic. They are a call to pay attention. When the waters begin behaving in ways that defy expectation, The question is no longer only what physical process caused the waves. The deeper question is whether we as a people are genuinely prepared for dangers that arrive more quickly than any warning system can respond. The danger did not stay out on the water. Across communities in Arizona and Nevada, residents woke to find something unexpected coating everything outside. Cars that had been completely clean the night before were now speckled with brown-black droplets. The same dark material had settled onto rooftops, driveways, window glass, and solar panels. In some neighborhoods, the residue appeared as isolated dots. In others, it had formed wide, oily streaks that caught the early morning light in a way that immediately drew attention. At first, many people assumed it was ordinary desert dust. Then, they reached out and touched it. The substance was sticky and heavy, and it resisted water in a way that ordinary dirt does not. Running a garden hose over it accomplished nothing. Soap only spread it further across glass and metal surfaces. Some residents noticed a sharp chemical smell. Others said it reminded them of burned motor oil, industrial soot, or the residue from an exhaust plume. Nobody knew where it had originated. Had it blown in from a manufacturing facility? Had it fallen from passing aircraft? Was it debris from a distant wildfire carried hundreds of miles by the upper atmosphere? Was it safe to touch? Could children play on surfaces coated with it? Could pets track it indoors on their paws? And most urgently for many families, had they already been breathing in particles of it while they slept? Environmental investigators arrived wearing protective gear. They carefully scraped samples from vehicle hoods, rooftop surfaces, and pavement, sealed them in containers, and transported them to laboratories. But while the testing began, the substance remained exactly where it had landed. It clung to the surfaces of neighborhoods with persistence, visible and unexplained, impossible to simply wash away. Possible explanations included industrial air pollution, airborne ash, desert particulates mixed with atmospheric moisture, or smoke particles that had traveled enormous distances before falling back to Earth. Aircraft do release certain residues under specific conditions, but without a confirmed origin, each proposed explanation opened new questions rather than answering the existing ones. That uncertainty made the event deeply unsettling in a way that a storm or a fire does not. A storm is visible from a distance. A fire can be tracked on a satellite map. But this substance appeared while entire communities were asleep. There was no siren, no visible cloud, no definable moment when the contamination began. By the time the sun rose, it was already on the places where people lived, ate, slept, and breathed. Exodus 9 describes soot being hurled into the air above Egypt, where it spread across the land as part of a terrifying judgment. That comparison does not confirm that these modern droplets carry the same meaning. But the imagery is difficult to dismiss. A dark substance spreading silently through the atmosphere and settling over homes and streets without a single moment of warning. One strange event can be written off as coincidence. A flood can be attributed to rainfall. A wildfire can be explained by drought and wind patterns. Drifting smoke is a consequence of atmospheric conditions. Fish die-offs can be connected to algae and oxygen depletion. Ancient petroglyphs can be categorized as indigenous religious art. Violent waves can be traced to rogue formations and underwater pressure shifts. A dark residue can be linked to pollution or particulate fallout. But when all 7 of these appear together within the same unfolding season, the pattern becomes far more difficult to set aside and move on from. Waters rise, flames advance, the sky goes dark, wildlife perishes, ancient warnings resurface, the ocean turns violent, a black substance falls from above. 7 events, 7 separate locations. One deeply pressing question. Are these isolated natural catastrophes with no connection to each other, or are they collectively demanding the kind of attention that this generation has largely refused to give? At this point, the question has grown beyond any single event. Floods, wildfires, dying animals, darkened skies, and frozen artifacts each carry their own scientific explanation. But when so many extraordinary events occur within the same generation, something natural happens in the human heart. People begin turning back to Scripture and asking what it says about moments like this. The Bible has never treated the natural world as separate from the spiritual condition of humanity. Romans 8:22 says that the whole creation has been groaning together in the pains of childbirth until now. Creation itself bears the weight of a world broken by sin and waits with longing for God's final act of restoration. Jesus was direct with his followers about what to expect in the days leading toward his return. In Luke 21, he described earthquakes, widespread hunger, disease, fearful events, and signs in the heavens. He did not instruct them to dismiss these things, and he did not tell them to collapse in terror. He said, "When these things begin to take place, stand up and lift up your heads because your redemption is drawing near." Luke 21:28. The prophets carried similar messages. Hosea 4 describes a land in mourning while animals, birds, and fish perish together. Ezekiel 20 paints the image of an unstoppable fire sweeping across the land without being quenched. Joel 2 speaks of blood, fire, and rising columns of smoke. These passages have always carried a consistent message. Creation itself can become a witness to the spiritual condition of the people who inhabit it. None of this means that every flood or every wildfire must be declared a direct fulfillment of a specific prophecy. The Bible never encourages its readers to make reckless predictions or announce dates for events that only God knows. What Scripture consistently calls God's people to do is remain spiritually awake and test everything against the standard of His Word. Sadly, the pattern that emerges most clearly in the lives of many people today is not watchfulness. It is distraction. Disasters are consumed as news content. People watch briefly, feel something for a moment, and then scroll forward into the next story. But Jesus said repeatedly, "Watch," not because we have been given a calendar of coming events, but precisely because we have not. The most essential question is not whether any particular disaster qualifies as a prophetic sign. The greater question is whether these events are drawing us closer to God or giving us another reason to delay that conversation. If Jesus returned at this very moment, would we be prepared to meet him? That question is the one Scripture consistently places in front of every generation that has ever lived. Jesus never called his followers toward fear. He called them toward watchfulness. Fear generates paralysis and confusion. Watchfulness generates faith, prayer, and obedience. It causes us to look inward, examine what has taken root in our hearts, hold tightly to the promises of God, and stay spiritually ready regardless of what the news cycle brings. No matter what happens in the world surrounding us, our greatest stability is not found in predicting what comes next. It is found in faithfully walking beside Christ today. Even in the most severe disasters, something else consistently emerges from ordinary people. When floodwaters pour into neighborhoods, strangers show up with boats. They rarely ask what the person inside the house believes or whether they have met before. They simply move toward the danger because someone is trapped and needs help. A family stranded on a rooftop might suddenly see a beam of light cutting through the rain toward them. That light might belong to an official rescue team, or a fisherman who turned his boat around, or a neighbor who simply refused to stay home while others were in danger. When wildfires push toward towns, firefighters place themselves between the flames and families they have never encountered. They push through smoke and exhaustion and intense heat to protect homes, schools, hospitals, and places of worship. Behind the fire lines, volunteers organize meals. Community buildings open their doors. People donate clothing, medicine, blankets, and temporary places to sleep. This is also part of the story, and it must not be overlooked. Disaster exposes vulnerability, but it also consistently uncovers something remarkable about the human capacity for courage. A storm may level a structure, but it cannot destroy the impulse of compassion. Fire may consume what people have built, but it cannot burn away genuine faith. Darkness may swallow the sky, but it cannot stop one person from becoming a source of light for someone who is overwhelmed. There are parents who hold themselves steady so that their children will not be crushed by fear. There are elderly neighbors who share the little they have left. There are churches that transform overnight into emergency shelters. There are medical workers who continue serving long after any reasonable shift boundary has passed. There are people who have lost virtually everything and still find the reserve to sit beside someone who has lost even more and offer them a reason to hold on. These moments press back against every narrative that says humanity has nothing left to offer. We are not only capable of fear, we are also capable of sacrifice, of courage, of generosity, and of choosing to stand beside someone we have never met simply because they need us to be there. This is why the message carried through all of this must never be only about destruction. A warning without hope does not call people to rise, it drives them deeper into despair. But a warning that carries genuine faith alongside it has the power to transform a life. Jesus warned his disciples because he loved them. His words about coming difficulty were not designed to leave them trapped in dread. They were given so that when those moments arrived, his followers would not be caught completely unprepared. He described hard times ahead, but he also told them not to let their hearts be troubled. That is not an instruction to deny reality or pretend that difficulty does not exist. Faith is not the refusal to see what is actually happening. Faith is the ability to look directly at uncertainty and still trust that God has not released his hold on his people. It means preparing wisely without surrendering to obsession. It means listening when official warnings are issued, protecting those in your care, standing alongside your community, and continuing to trust God even when clarity about the future is nowhere to be found. Psalm 46 tells us that God is our refuge and strength, a present and dependable help in moments of trouble. It goes on to say that we will not be afraid even when the earth shifts and the waters roar and foam. Notice carefully what that verse does not promise. It does not promise that the ground will never move. It does not promise that the waters will never rise. What it promises is that even when both happen, God remains a refuge that cannot be taken from us. That is what people need now. Not a guarantee that nothing hard will come, a foundation that does not crumble when it does. Practical readiness also belongs in this conversation. Families need emergency plans that everyone knows how to follow. Important documents and irreplaceable items need to be protected and accessible. People need to know in advance where to go and what routes to take if a flood, a fire, a storm, or an evacuation order arrives. Communities need to develop the habit of looking out for elderly residents, those with serious illness, and people who live alone without anyone to check on them. Preparation is not a sign of weak faith. Noah built the ark before a single drop of rain had fallen. Joseph organized food storage before the years of famine arrived. Responsible preparation can save lives, reduce panic in a crisis, and free people to help others when emergencies begin rather than scrambling to survive. But the preparation that runs deepest is not material. It is spiritual. It means taking an honest look at whether anger, pride, unresolved bitterness, or unchecked greed has quietly moved into the center of your life. It means pursuing reconciliation while there is still time to have that conversation. It means choosing to release resentment rather than carrying it into an uncertain future. It means returning to prayer, to scripture, to honesty, to humility, and to genuine love for the people around you. The world does not need more voices amplifying fear. It needs people who are steady in the middle of instability. It needs followers of Christ who can step into chaos without contributing more chaos. It needs neighbors who communicate calmly, share accurate and verified information, and choose not to forward every alarming rumor that crosses their screen. It needs families that build the habit of praying together. It needs communities that understand clearly that survival is never only about protecting yourself, it also means refusing to leave the most vulnerable people behind. When unusual events occur and information begins circulating rapidly, resist the impulse to immediately share everything that seems dramatic. Verify what you see. Look for evidence in credible sources. Avoid treating the suffering of real people as content to consume and pass along. Remember that behind every striking image is a family navigating the worst experience of their lives, dealing with real losses, and facing the overwhelming task of beginning again. Pray for them, and when action is within your reach, go beyond prayer. Support organizations doing active relief work. Give what you are able to give. Call someone who may be isolated and afraid. Help a neighbor develop their own emergency plan. Position yourself to be an answer to the prayers others are offering. The events gathering around us are an invitation to serious reflection. but they are equally an invitation to deeper compassion. Perhaps the most powerful response available to us as the world darkens is not louder alarm, but stronger, steadier, more visible faith. A candle looks insignificant in the middle of the day, but when everything goes dark, even a single small flame can give an entire room its bearings. In the same way, one genuine act of kindness directed at a person in crisis may look tiny, measured against a national disaster, but to the person receiving it, that act of kindness may be the precise reason they decide not to give up. So remain alert, but do not surrender the peace that God offers you. Prepare carefully, but do not allow yourself to be consumed by speculation about every possible future scenario. Take warning seriously, but do not let every difficult event become proof in your mind that hope has been permanently extinguished. The future rests in God's hands, not in the grip of fear. There may be harder days still ahead, but there may also be stories of rescue, of communities rebuilding from nothing, of broken relationships being restored, and of renewal on a scale we have not yet seen. Communities shattered by disaster can find their footing again. Homes can be constructed where only wreckage stood. Rivers can return to health. Forests that burned to the ground can grow back. People who felt completely lost can discover faith, direction, and resilience they never knew they possessed. Tell us in the comments what gives you hope when circumstances feel the heaviest. Go ahead and like this video, pass it along to someone who needs a word of encouragement right now, and subscribe so you can be part of what we continue to explore together. Thank you genuinely for watching, and may God give you clear peace, solid wisdom, and real courage for every day that is still ahead. But here's what makes this particular moment carry its own kind of weight. What collapsed did not collapse because of a single powerful wave. It collapsed because the foundation had been quietly deteriorating long before anyone looked. And that is the warning that extends far beyond any one location. Jesus said in Matthew 7:26-27 that the house built on sand would fall when the rain descended, the floods came, and the winds beat against it. The storm did not create the flawed foundation. The storm revealed it. That warning moves well beyond a hillside in California. A nation can project strength while hollowing out at its core. A family can look peaceful from the outside while quietly fracturing within. A life can appear successful to every outside observer while being built on nothing that can actually bear the weight it carries. The cliff gave way when the hidden deterioration finally reached the point where it could no longer hold. After those cliffs came down, a very different kind of warning seemed to be emerging much further north. In Alaska's vast and frozen terrain, a strange account began gaining traction online. It described something reaching 15 feet in length, moving slowly and deliberately through freezing Alaskan waters. Witnesses reported something dark and low-moving across snow-covered ground, with a body people compared to that of a crocodile and claws that left unusual markings behind. The account remains entirely unverified. It may well be a misidentified animal, distorted footage, or a rumor that gained momentum faster than any verification could catch it. But what unsettled people was not only the description of what was seen, it was the location where it was reportedly seen. Alaska is experiencing rapid and dramatic transformation. Ice formations that persisted for countless generations are now retreating at a pace that is accelerating. Permafrost is destabilizing. Ground that was once permanently frozen is subsiding. Ancient skeletal remains, trapped gases, buried organic material, and organisms preserved for millennia are being uncovered as the cold barrier that held them gives way. And the question that began circulating, and that is genuinely difficult to dismiss, is this: if the retreating ice can resurface things buried for thousands of years, what else might still be waiting underneath it? Some voices online began exploring the idea that remnants of a much older world might be coming back into contact with the present. Scientists would appropriately call for caution here, and that caution is warranted. This is not confirmation that ancient creatures are returning to life. Natural explanations almost certainly exist for what was reported, but the image it produces is still striking. Claw marks pressed into snow, ground that was once permanently frozen cracking open from below, long buried things breaking back through the surface and into the light. Romans 8:22 says, "For we know that the whole creation groaneth and travaileth in pain together until now." In this moment, those words carry unusual weight. The land is fracturing. The fires are still spreading.